Plagiarism in academic works has become a serious issue that threatens the integrity of research and scholarship. As technology has made copying and pasting content easier than ever, it is important for students, researchers, and professors to understand what constitutes plagiarism and how to avoid it. This paper will explain the different types of plagiarism, provide examples of each, and discuss what is and is not allowed according to academic standards. Scope of plagiarism. Plagiarism involves using someone else's ideas, words, or other work products and passing them off as one's own. This commonly occurs in written works, but can also apply to other media like artwork, computer code, experiments, performances, or inventions. Any type of work that involves intellectual effort can potentially experience plagiarism. The scope of plagiarism includes not just directly copying portions of another's work, but also paraphrasing without proper citation. It also extends to ideas if a significant element of one's work is derived from another source but not properly attributed. It can be considered plagiarism, regardless of whether exact wording was copied. Types of plagiarism. There are several common types of plagiarism that authors should be aware of and avoid. Word-for-word copying. This involves directly copying sentences, phrases, or longer passages from another work without quotation marks or proper citation. This is the most clear-cut type of plagiarism. Paraphrasing without citation. Rewording another's ideas or research findings without citing the original source is still considered plagiarism, even if the wording is changed. Merely changing around a few words does not make the idea an original one. Cut and paste plagiarism. This subcategory of word-for-word copying involves splicing together sentences or paragraphs from multiple sources and presenting them as one's own work without citation. Even changing the order of cut and pasted content does not mitigate the plagiarism. Self-plagiarism. Submitting work that has been previously submitted for another assignment or publication without acknowledging that it's one's previously work is a form of plagiarizing oneself. Published ideas should not be resubmitted without attribution to the original source. Quoting sources without proper citation. If any verbatim language, statistics, ideas, or other content is included from an outside source, it must be surrounded by quotation marks or otherwise formatted according to style guide conventions and also cited appropriately. Missing or improper citation is still considered plagiarism, even if a source is quoted. Failed paraphrase. When trying to paraphrase, the language used may inadvertently remain dissimilar to the original source. Even if citations are provided, if the paraphrased content follows the sentence structure and unique phrasing of the original too closely, it constitutes plagiarism. Ghostwriting. Having another individual or service secretly write a paper or other work that is then submitted as one's own original work is a serious ethical violation and form of plagiarism. Paid or unpaid. Ghostwritten works should never be passed off as one's own independent scholarship. Plagiarism mosaic. Taking materials from multiple sources and creating an argument or mosaic where no individual element has been copied verbatim but the overall feel and many unique ideas of an original work have been closely replicated, still qualifies as plagiarism. Each of these types involves misrepresenting the original contributions of other scholars and therefore breaks the standards of academic integrity and honesty required for most publications, coursework, or research environments. Addressing unintentional plagiarism. While some plagiarism occurs deliberately to deceive or advantage oneself, accidental plagiarism can also happen if proper citation practices are not fully understood. For minor first offenses that appear unintentional, some steps can be taken to remedy the situation. Admitting responsibility and being willing to learn from the mistake is important. Claiming no fault will only make the situation worse. Providing the original source locations to support any unattributed content shows good faith in clarifying any confusion rather than attempting to cover up plagiarized elements. Revising the work to add proper citation formatting for all relevant sources per the standards of the specific assignment or publication. Submitting an explanation for what occurred and a commitment not to repeat similar errors in the future. Describing steps that will be taken to learn citation practices more thoroughly can help mitigate concerns. Accepting any educational or disciplinary consequences from instructors, editors, or committees. Addressing the case while striving to learn from the experience. An cooperative attitude and willingness to correct the problem rather than deny responsibility are key to being given the benefit of the doubt that the plagiarism occurred due to negligence rather than malice in unintentional cases. But repeating such mistakes may be viewed more harshly over time. Intentional plagiarism, plagiarizing the work of others in order to mislead or gain unfair academic or professional advantages, is considered a serious academic offense. The consequences for proven intentional plagiarism are typically much more severe than penalties for a minor first-time case believed to be accidental. Some signs that might indicate intentional rather than accidental plagiarism include large portions of text or entire assignments being copied verbatim without citation. Carelessness alone wouldn't usually cross such extensive thresholds. Efforts made to conceal copying by changing a few words, rearranging sentences, or citing bogus sources rather than original sources. This shows deceit rather than just neglecting citation rules. A pattern of uncited paraphrasing or quotation emerging across multiple assignments rather than appearing isolated to one instance. Recurrence suggests a purposeful methodology rather than isolated errors. Plagiarism occurring close to deadlines or involving important, high-stakes projects rather than low-impact learning exercises, which is more suspicious of grade-motivated misconduct. Previous offenses already having been addressed, showing the individual did not properly learn from or address past issues as was required. Repeat offenses indicate disregard for the policy. Inconsistencies emerging in the plagiarized content that suggest combining work from separate time periods or contradictory sources in inauthentic ways, admissions or evidence of intent to deceive instructors, employers, or exam proctors to gain unearned benefits through plagiarized work. If intentional plagiarism is found to have occurred, common penalties include failing grades on assignments, expulsion from academic programs, retraction of published works, termination of employment, and legal penalties in egregious cases. The offense is not treated lightly when proven to be premeditated deception rather than a correctable lapse in scholarship standards. Self-plagiarism consideration. Self-plagiarism policies can sometimes vary more between different academic disciplines, workplace contexts, or publication venues. Some factors to consider regarding self-plagiarism include reusing minor excerpts of one's own work without attribution may be acceptable, depending on how much new original content is also added for a new audience, but any significant reuse should be referenced. Redistributing an entire work product and changed across multiple assignments would rightly be seen as double dipping, but one section from a larger work could likely be repurposed, with citation. Previous work intended for one context may need significant revision or expansion for adaptation to another field. Demonstrating substantial value added would help avoid self-plagiarism concerns. Publishing the same findings or text in multiple sources without disclosure risks misrepresenting the contribution as novel when it is in fact redundant. This aspect of self-plagiarism is less ambiguous than other cases. Conference presentations summarizing methods or early results presented later in a journal article do not usually constitute self-plagiarism, as long as attribution is provided and wording changes are made for the new format. Certain professions, like grant writing, may require revisiting previous work for new funding cycles, but any repurposed material still requires citation of its origins. In most academic circles, self-plagiarism is generally not treated as harshly as other types, since it does not involve stealing others' scholarship. But clear attribution is still expected, and demonstrating substantial enhancement is advisable when repurposing one's own prior works. Fair use and citation exceptions. While plagiarism most often relates to verbatim copying of content, certain usages are still permitted without attribution under specific exceptions. Fair use allows quotations of limited portions such as short phrases as part of reviews, commentary, or analysis, when the copied amount is small compared to the overall work. But analysis based largely on someone else's full passages would not qualify. Widely known facts or mere ideas, not original analyses or discoveries, need no citation because they are considered public knowledge rather than private intellectual property. But specific interpretation or compilation of facts usually does warrant attribution. Citing personal communications like email interviews for factual content rather than substantial verbatim quotes may not always require footnotes, but author permission should be obtained if publishing lengthy excerpts, works with fraudulent, unverifiable, obsolete, or extremely brief content that offers little intellectual merit may not warrant full citation requirements, though fair portions could still need attribution. Paraphrasing simple statistical data or routine experimental observations without unique analysis may not warrant strict citation. But uncommon data compilations or insights based on such routine facts typically require crediting influential sources. Citing sources is still recommended rather than required under fair use to establish credibility through transparency. And permission is advisable for direct quotes or facts not generally considered basic knowledge. But these types of limited reuses are within reason and help foster open exchange of ideas while still avoiding plagiarism issues. Group projects and collaborative work special consideration must be given to assignment, research or publication credits in collaborative work contexts. Group project instructions should clarify expectations like whether individual components or final products warrant sole credit. Ambiguous criteria risk authorship disputes. Jointly conducted empirical studies, literature reviews, or methodological work generally entitle all meaningful contributors to shared authorship status on reports or publications, even if duties divided tasks unevenly. Dividing theoretical, empirical, and editorial work equitably to merit. Co-author status requires substantive intellectual contributions throughout the research process for each person, rather than limited assistance roles. Disciplinary conventions vary, so authorship thresholds may differ. Acknowledging individuals providing important background information, reagents or equipment, but not meeting core authorship standards is preferable to omitting their helpful participation. Plagiarism concerns can be avoided in collaborative work by indicating group member responsibilities upfront and obtaining permission if directly incorporating portions of teammates' separate drafts rather than organic integration. Disputes over improper author ordering, omitted contributors, or submission of collaborative work individually rather than collectively constitute ethical breaches and in some cases plagiarism, depending on permissions. Citing fellow group members' designs, data analyses, or isolated findings incorporated into a joint report prevents plagiarizing their specialized contributions to the combined effort. Collegiality, clear communication, and proper attribution of collaborative inputs according to disciplinary norms help ensure all parties receive due credit for multi-authored academic and research partnerships. Avoiding plagiarism in practice. The most effective way to avoid committing plagiarism is developing a rigorous system for managing sources and citations. Some best practices include keeping an exhaustive reference list in your writing or research process with full bibliographic details like titles, dates, pages for all texts consulted. Citing sources in text with a consistent citation style. Immediately any outside information is used rather than waiting until later. Quoting text verbatim or summarizing key ideas in your own words, rather than just copying-pasting content. Varying sentence structure when paraphrasing to avoid appearing to closely follow phrasing of original sources. Safeguarding rough drafts, source materials, and citations against accidental mixing that could suggest intentional copying. Double-checking all references are included accurately in works cited or reference pages according to style guide formats. Consult your instructor, publisher, or other relevant authority if ever uncertain whether credit needs to be given for certain content. Using citation management software programs to automate in-text citations and reference lists for stress-free source attribution. Proofreading thoroughly and inviting trusted peers to review works for missed attributions before final submission. Being diligent about citations and paraphrasing skills is the most definitive way for students and scholars to avoid inadvertently plagiarizing and compromise their academic integrity. With practice, proper quoting and referencing becomes routine. Here are some additional points on plagiarism in academia. Plagiarism policies apply not just to written work, but also to other creative works and research. This includes things like artwork, music, computer code, laboratory experiments, dance or theater performances, inventions, etc. Any intellectual property or work that requires effort can potentially experience plagiarism. Self-plagiarism is taken less seriously than plagiarizing others' work, but it is still not acceptable to reuse significant portions of one's own previous work without citation. Some limited self-referencing or building on past ideas may be allowed, but submitting the same paper twice would clearly be self-plagiarism. Intentional plagiarism is usually handled very harshly, with penalties like failing courses, expulsion, losing grants or funding, or revocation of degrees at the extreme end. Some cases have even involved legal action and lawsuits for major acts of deception. Plagiarism detection software is commonly used now to catch copied content. However, because paraphrasing and ideas can still involve plagiarism, the software only aids analysis and doesn't replace careful reviews of citations. Plagiarism education is important for students new to academia who may not fully grasp citation conventions. Universities generally have academic integrity training and use early minor plagiarism cases as learning opportunities with leniency for honest mistakes. Double-checking citations, using quotation marks, and rigorously paraphrasing are essential habits for students to avoid committing plagiarism accidentally due to carelessness. It's always better to oversight than risk plagiarizing through unclear attribution. Culture and language barriers can sometimes contribute to unintentional plagiarism if students are unfamiliar with Western scholarly traditions. Educators should consider this and ensure citation practices are very clearly explained. The gray areas around things like commonly known facts, personal communications, citations, and fair use quotations require nuanced judgment that even experts sometimes disagree on. Clarity and moderation are wise. Let me know if any part of the plagiarism topic needs further explanation or discussion of specific cases. Proper citation and avoiding deception are cornerstones of honest scholarship. In scholarship and coursework, representing others' ideas or words as one's own stands in violation of academic honesty principles. While unintentional mistakes can usually be addressed, intentional plagiarism is a serious ethical offense. Recognizing the varieties of plagiarism and implementing effective citation practices helps writers fulfill attribution obligations and avoid deception through misrepresented ownership over intellectual content. The standards for scholarly integrity are not onerous, but instead uphold principles of openness, review, and merit through original and properly contextualized contributions to collective knowledge.